The station door burst open, and a small boy stumbled in, clutching a trembling German Shepherd puppy to his chest. His face was red from the cold, his eyes swollen from crying. "Please," he said between shaky breaths, "if I give you my dog, will you arrest my stepfather?" The room fell silent. Sheriff Daniels froze, unsure if he'd heard correctly. But then he saw the bruises on the boy's wrist, the fear hidden behind his tears, and he knew this was no ordinary plea. What began as a child's desperate bargain would soon uncover a secret buried in silence, and prove that sometimes the smallest voices can bring down the darkest truths. The snow was falling heavier than usual that night, blanketing the quiet town in a white silence. Down the empty road, a small figure trudged forward, a boy no older than 10, his breath forming clouds in the icy air. In his arms, wrapped in a torn blanket, was a trembling German Shepherd puppy. The boy's name was Ethan, and the puppy was his best friend, Buddy, the only soul who never left his side. Home wasn't safe anymore. His stepfather's shouting had turned into something darker, something that made his mother cry behind closed doors. Tonight, when a crash echoed through the house, Ethan didn't wait. He grabbed Buddy and ran barefoot into the storm. Each step burned from the cold, but he didn't stop until he saw the faint neon open sign glowing outside the sheriff's station. His fingers were numb, his cheeks streaked with tears, but he pushed the door open with all his strength. Inside, warmth flooded over him, and startled officers turned to look. Ethan clutched Buddy tighter, his voice trembling as he whispered the words that would silence everyone in the room. "Please, help my mom." Sheriff Daniels was finishing paperwork when the door creaked open. The cold rushed in, carrying a snow-covered boy and a shivering puppy. Daniels rose immediately. "Hey, son, are you all right?" he asked gently. Ethan shook his head, clutching Buddy tighter. His lips trembled as he stepped closer to the desk. "Please," he whispered, tears welling up. "If I give you my dog, will you arrest my stepfather?" The room went silent. One deputy froze mid-sentence. Another lowered his coffee cup in disbelief. Daniels knelt to meet the boy's eyes. "Why would you say that?" he asked softly. Ethan swallowed hard, his voice cracking. "He hurts my mom. He hurts me too. But he said nobody would believe me, unless I gave something valuable." Daniels felt his throat tighten. He gently placed a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "You don't have to give me your dog," he said, voice firm but kind. "You already did something brave. You came here." Ethan looked down at Buddy, who whimpered softly, pressing closer to him. "He said he'd take Buddy away if I told." Ethan whispered, "Please don't let him." Daniels stood, jaw set. "Don't worry, son. You keep your dog. We'll take care of the rest. I promise." While Ethan sat wrapped in a blanket, sipping hot cocoa, Sheriff Daniels stepped into his office. His face was pale, his eyes sharp with thought. "Check the records," he ordered one of the deputies. "Any reports from his address?" The deputy returned minutes later, shaking his head. "Nothing. No calls, no complaints. Clean file." Daniels frowned. Too clean that he looked back through the glass window where Ethan sat with Buddy asleep in his lap. "We're going over there," he said quietly. "Now." The drive to Ethan's house was tense, headlights cutting through the snow. When they arrived, Carl, Ethan's stepfather, opened the door, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Officers," he said smoothly. "Is there a problem?" Daniels could smell alcohol immediately. Behind Carl stood Ethan's mother, pale, shaking, eyes full of fear. "Everything okay here, ma'am?" Daniels asked. She nodded quickly, but her trembling hands told another story. Then a faint sound came from behind the couch, a small whimper. Daniels stepped closer and spotted Buddy's broken collar lying on the floor. Carl's fake smile cracked. "That brat's been lying to you," he shouted suddenly, his face twisting in rage. Daniels' voice turned cold. "I think we've heard enough." In that moment, Ethan's mother burst into tears. "Please," she sobbed, "don't let him come back." Daniels met her eyes and nodded. The truth had finally surfaced, and this time, it wouldn't be buried under silence and fear. Carl's voice rose like thunder, echoing through the small living room. "You think you can just walk in here and ruin my family?" he bellowed, stepping toward Sheriff Daniels. The deputies moved in, but Carl shoved one aside, his face red with fury. Daniels didn't flinch. "That's enough," he said firmly. "You're under arrest for assault and endangerment." Carl's rage exploded. He lunged forward, but in seconds, Daniels had him pinned against the wall, handcuffs clicking tightly around his wrists. "You can't do this," Carl spat. "She's lying. They're all lying." But no one listened anymore. Ethan's mother collapsed to her knees, sobbing uncontrollably as a deputy helped her up. "It's over, ma'am," the officer whispered. "You're safe now." Outside, snow fell steadily, muffling the chaos inside. Ethan stood at the doorway clutching Buddy, eyes wide as flashing red and blue lights painted the walls. Daniels stepped out with Carl in custody, his voice steady despite the storm. "Get him in the car." As the door closed behind them, the house finally fell silent. Daniels turned to Ethan, kneeling to his level. "You did the hardest thing a kid can do," he said softly. "You told the truth." Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. "Will he come back?" Daniels shook his head. "Not this time, son." He rested a hand on Ethan's shoulder. "You keep your dog close. You've both earned your freedom tonight." The following morning, sunlight crept through the blinds of the sheriff's station, replacing the cold storm with a new calm. Ethan sat beside his mother in the waiting area, Buddy's head resting in his lap. The bruises on her face were faint, but the relief in her eyes was unmistakable. Sheriff Daniels approached with 2 cups of cocoa, handing one to Ethan. "You're safe now," he said gently. "We've arranged a place for you and your mom. Somewhere warm, somewhere new." Ethan looked up, his small voice trembling. "Do we have to leave Buddy?" Daniels smiled. "No, son. He's family." Buddy wagged his tail softly, as if he understood every word. Days passed, and the story spread across the small town. People whispered about the little boy who had offered his dog to save his mother. Donations poured in, toys, clothes, even a new bed for Buddy. Daniels watched from his office window as officers played fetch with the puppy in the snow-covered yard. Later that week, he visited the shelter where Ethan and his mother were staying. The boy's smile returned slowly, piece by piece. "You helped my mom," Ethan said, hugging him tightly. Daniels knelt, placing a badge-shaped sticker on the boy's jacket. "You did that," he said softly. "You were the brave one." Buddy barked once, tail wagging proudly. For the first time in years, Ethan's laughter filled the room. Pure, free, and full of hope, spring arrived quietly, melting away the snow that once carried Ethan's tears. The air was warmer now, filled with the scent of new beginnings. Outside their new home, Ethan played in the yard with Buddy, the once scared puppy now grown strong and confident. His laughter echoed through the neighborhood, a sound that had once felt impossible. A familiar car pulled into the driveway. Sheriff Daniels stepped out, his hat in hand, smiling as Ethan ran toward him. "Sheriff," the boy shouted. Buddy bounded beside him, barking happily. Daniels knelt to greet them, patting the dog's head. "Looks like someone's been taking good care of you both," he said with a grin. Ethan's mother joined them on the porch, gratitude written all over her face. "We owe you everything," she said softly. Daniels shook his head. "No, ma'am. You owe me nothing. Your son's courage is what changed everything." Ethan looked up shyly. "Do you think I could ever be an officer? Like you?" Daniels smiled, eyes softening. "You already are, kid. You fought for what's right. That's what real officers do." Ethan's face lit up, and Buddy barked proudly beside him. Daniels reached into his pocket and handed the boy a small wooden badge, carved by the deputies. "For bravery," he said. "A true hero's badge." As the sheriff drove away, Ethan stood in the yard, badge clutched to his chest. The wind carried the sound of Buddy's bark across the open fields, a symbol of freedom, loyalty, and second chances. The story closed on Ethan and Buddy racing through the green grass. Sunlight shining on their faces, proof that even the smallest act of courage can rewrite the story of a lifetime.